Just a quick note before we start. I really want to improve my audience retention. If you think, hey, this is pretty good, give it a like and subscribe. If you're more like, not quite, drop me a comment and let me know what didn't work. All right, let's get into it. The letter she never mailed. I wasn't expecting to find anything in the attic. It was one of those old farmhouses off a forgotten road in Georgia, the kind that leaned too far in one direction and smelled like mildew and regret. My aunt had passed the place to me in her will, and I figured I'd sell it after a quick inspection. I brought gloves, a flashlight, and very low expectations. The attic stairs groaned like they were protesting every step. Dust floated in the air, thick as fog. I swept my light across the beams, the trunks, the forgotten furniture piled like brittle bones. And then I saw it. A bundle of old envelopes tied with twine. Some torn. One stained dark red in the center. Blood. I'd seen enough old wounds during my time working emergency services to know dried blood when I saw it. It soaked through the paper but didn't destroy it. I untied the twine with shaky fingers. The letter inside was dated October 1864, signed by someone named Thomas Avery, and it began. My dearest Clara, I do not ask for forgiveness, only the chance to see your face one more time. I read the whole thing twice, maybe 3 times. It wasn't long, just a page and a half, but each word sat heavy on the page, like it had waited 160 years to be read. The handwriting grew shakier near the end. He mentioned running. Desperation. He begged her not to believe what the others would say about him. He wasn't a traitor. He had to leave. He had to see her. And that's where it ended. No address, no postmark, never mailed. I didn't sleep that night. Next morning I drove into town, asked around about the Avery family. The librarian, a gray-haired woman with bright blue eyes, didn't even need to look it up. Oh, the Avery boy, she said. Deserter. Shot near the woods just past Miller's Creek. They say he was trying to get back here. Back to that girl who drank lye the day she got the telegram. Clara Jenkins. Local tragedy. Never married. Her family left the farm not long after. She said it like she'd told the story 100 times before. And maybe she had. I drove out to the creek. Just a bend in the woods now. Overgrown, quiet, but when I stepped out of the car, I swear I heard something. Not a voice, more like a rhythm. Footsteps. I waited. Listened. Then I read the letter aloud. I don't know why. Maybe to break the silence. Maybe because it felt wrong not to. When I reached the final line, the air changed. The woods went still, like the whole place had been holding its breath. Then, something behind me creaked. I turned. No one. Just the empty path and the whisper of leaves. But back at the house, I left the letter on the kitchen table. That night, just before sleep, I heard it again. Footsteps crossing the attic. I'd boarded it shut earlier. No one could be up there. Still, the footsteps kept pacing. And then, a voice. Ragged. Low. Like someone practicing words long forgotten. My dearest Clara. I moved out 2 weeks later, but the real question is this. If someone's been reading that letter every night since 1864, who's been listening? Echoes in Hangar 9, the old airfield outside San Angelo, hadn't seen a working plane in decades. Most of the buildings had crumbled, roofs bowed in, windows shattered, the desert wind carving its name into rust and wood. But Hangar 9 still stood. Not proudly, not even defiantly. Just as stubbornly. like it hadn't noticed time had passed. I got assigned to the restoration project in early spring. The plan was to turn the whole place into a historical site, Texas's own World War II museum. A few of us were in charge of assessing structural safety, cataloging artifacts, and this was unofficial, dealing with the stories, because every local had one. You couldn't buy a beer in town without some old-timer leaning in to whisper about Hangar 9. They all started the same way. You know it burned, right? Yeah. April 1945. Official cause, electrical fire. 6 mechanics trapped inside, all killed. But every story twisted from there. One guy claimed he saw shadows moving through the flames. Another swore he'd heard screaming long after the roof collapsed. A third said his uncle, one of the firemen, never spoke again after that night. I wasn't there to chase ghosts. I wanted my paycheck, a clean report, and maybe a photo or two for my blog. The first few days were uneventful. Dust, bird shit, the occasional rattlesnake. But on the 4th night, we left a recorder running, just for kicks. We found it the next morning, still in place. Battery nearly dead. I skipped ahead through the static, and then, clear as anything, you don't have to shoot anymore. Just a man's voice, calm, broken. I played it twice before calling the others. No one recognized it. We brushed it off as a prank or stray radio. But then it happened again, and again. Every night we recorded, we caught the same line, same voice, same moment, about 2:37 a.m. You don't have to shoot anymore. That's when Marcus, our lead researcher, started digging. He went into military archives, local news, whatever was still intact from the base's heyday. And he found something. A court-martial. Sealed, but partially referenced in a newsletter from 46. A pilot unnamed had fired on friendly ground crew during a drill. Claimed he saw movement in the dark. Thought it was sabotage. 5 dead. The 6th mechanic lived just long enough to say he knew. But here's the twist. There's no death certificate for the pilot. No discharge. No record of imprisonment. Marcus printed it all out. Showed me the notes. He looked spooked, and he wasn't the type. Maybe he's the voice, he said. Maybe he's still trying to say sorry. That night, Marcus went back in alone. He said he wanted to place a second mic deeper in the hangar. Said he'd be 15 minutes. We waited 40. Found him at the bottom of a broken ladder, neck snapped. Still holding the recorder. The audio survived. Only this time, the voice said something different. I said I was sorry. I said it. We didn't play it again. Weeks later, I came back alone. Don't ask me why. I walked to the back wall, where Marcus had fallen. Ran my fingers along the corroded metal. Something felt off about the paneling. I used a flashlight. Crouched down. There, etched from the inside of the sheet, so it could only be read from the back side. Barely visible, unless the light hit right. Help me. All caps, jagged, deep. Now, they want to open the museum next spring. Public tours, gift shop, reenactments. But I wonder if they'll let people go inside Hangar 9 at night. Would you? The Vietnam locker. The VA hospital in Santa Clara had been abandoned for 6 years before they started tearing it down. Built in the 1950s, expanded during the 60s, it had served generations of veterans until budget cuts and mold and asbestos made it more trouble than it was worth. Now, the state wanted to level the place and build condos. My brother Matt worked security on the demolition team. Night shift. Easy money, he said. Just walking the halls with a flashlight, making sure no one broke in to tag the walls or steal copper. He started texting me weird shit about 3 weeks into the job. First, it was sounds, like someone walking just out of sight. Not footsteps on tile, more like leaves crunching, or wet branches snapping. I joked that he was just hearing raccoons. Then he said he found a locker. Number 77. Most of the hospital had been cleared, furniture sold, records destroyed, all the personal items packed or donated. But this locker, deep in the old rehab wing, was locked and rusted shut. It was the only one left. He asked around. No one knew who it had belonged to. No record, no key. So one night, bored and half daring himself, he forced it open with a crowbar. Inside, he found a pair of old military boots. Red soil still caked on the soles. Matt didn't know much about war gear, but he recognized the tags sewn into the lining. A Vietnamese phrase meaning light step, quick death. He took a picture, sent it to me. Then another text. Smells like wet earth in here, like after rain. I didn't reply. I was half asleep. By morning, the text had stopped. I figured he just crashed after his shift, but he didn't come home. And he didn't answer calls, or texts, or emails. They searched the site. Nothing. Dogs lost the trail at the back entrance. A week later, the city workers at the water treatment plant called it in. Said they'd found a body caught in the drainage grid, tied up in what looked like vines, except they weren't local. The roots had come from tropical plants, ferns and creepers, and something like bamboo. They wrapped around Matt's arms, legs, neck. He was barefoot. His boots were never recovered. I went to the site. Just once. The locker was still there. Open now. Empty. But the smell lingered, like fresh rain on foreign soil. I left without touching anything. A month later, a demolition worker broke his leg when the floor gave out beneath him. He swore he saw trees growing through the tile, swore he heard whispers in a language he didn't know. They say the rest of the lockers are safe, but 77 is still marked in red paint. I asked the site manager why they haven't removed it. He said no matter what they do, the paint keeps bleeding through. Would you open it again? No rank, no name. It took nearly 3 days to put out the fire. Not because the trailer was big. It wasn't. It was barely 100 square feet, tucked into the back of an abandoned RV park outside Gila Bend. But something about the blaze didn't behave right. Fire crews said the heat kept pulsing back after they doused it, like the flames didn't want to die. When it was over, there wasn't much left. No furniture, no photos, no journals or IDs. Just one dog tag, melted at the edges. Blank. No name, no rank, no serial number. Sheriff Dalton had seen a lot in his 40 years, but this was different. He said the tag felt warm, even a day later, like it had memory. The man who'd lived there? Everyone just called him Joe. A quiet guy. Gray hair, a strong back. He came into town once a week for groceries and gas. Never talked about his past. Paid in cash. Slept in that trailer alone for 22 years. When the fire happened, the coroner expected a body. There was none. Just the tag. So they started digging. Found out Joe was on a VA list for mental health services, but under a provisional name. When they checked deeper, they hit a dead end. Social Security? Expired. Military record? Sealed. Except one thing leaked. Back in 1991, during the Gulf War, there was a squad that went missing for 72 hours. They resurfaced with full gear, no injuries, but refused to speak about what happened. That squad's after-action report mentioned a soldier who wasn't supposed to be there. No uniform, no file, no chain of command. Just a man who told them what to do, and they obeyed. We just followed him, one surviving member said. I don't remember choosing to. It felt like we already had. His name wasn't recorded. None of them could remember hearing it. When investigators went to pull satellite images from the night Joe's trailer burned, they found corrupted data. Just static. Like the area had gone dark for a few hours. The land is empty now. Scorched into a perfect circle. Some of the locals drive out there at night. They say if you park facing west and kill the engine, you'll see a figure walking the rim of the burn. Never gets closer. Never goes away. Just keeps walking. And if you wait long enough, you'll hear a voice say something low. You know what to do. The smart ones drive off. The others never check back in. Fort Ellis doesn't exist. There's no such place as Fort Ellis. That's what the Department of Defense said. That's what every database insisted. That's what I was told when I filed a public records request. But it's there, or it was. I found it in an old Army logistics map from 1952, buried deep in a university archive. A square marked Fort Ellis, Section 4-17, tucked in the northern edge of a pine-covered region in upstate Pennsylvania. There were no roads listed, no nearby towns. Just that label, hanging in the trees. My senior thesis was on lost military infrastructure, sites that once existed but were decommissioned, repurposed, or, in some cases, deliberately erased. Fort Ellis became my obsession. I borrowed a beat-up Jeep and drove to where the map said it should be. Spent 2 days navigating dirt trails, avoiding hunting zones, getting bitten by mosquitoes the size of quarters, and I found nothing. Just trees, deer tracks, an occasional canteen rusted into the mud. But on the third night, around midnight, I decided to follow the northern trail a little farther. It wasn't on any GPS, just a faded line in the underbrush. That's when I saw it. A tank. Not a modern one. An M47 Patton, if I remember my research right. Parked dead center of the trail, dark with dust, treads half buried in pine needles. No markings, no crew. I didn't touch it. Just stood there. Stared. Then my phone buzzed, a notification. It said, "Supply delay. Hold position per officer command." I froze. No app showed the message. Just the push notification, hanging for a few seconds before vanishing. I turned and walked back. Fast. Didn't look behind me. The next morning my phone had a new folder in the gallery. No name. Just a timestamp. 1 hour of video it showed me. Standing in front of the tank. Only I wasn't holding the phone. It was like someone else was recording. The camera stayed behind a tree, zoomed in, steady. My expression didn't change. For an entire hour, I didn't move. Just stood, like I was waiting for orders. I haven't shown it to anyone. I don't think I should. But sometimes, right before I fall asleep, I hear that same notification chime. No phone in my hand. No screen lit up. Just those words again. Hold position. And I do. Operation Resurface? They didn't find the folder until the floorboards were pried loose. It had been tucked between 2 joists, wrapped in plastic, sealed with what looked like wax. The handwriting on the label was smeared, but legible enough to read 2 words. Operation Resurface. His mother thought it was just junk. His younger brother, curious and twitchy, opened it. Inside, a dozen pages, water-stained and cramped with half-legible type. Military formatting, serial numbers, coordinates, and descriptions. Descriptions that didn't match any official report. Not even close. The mission claimed to have taken place in a suburb outside Fallujah, 2006. Objectives: recon, suppressive engagement, evacuation of non-combatants. But the notes were different. Sloppy. Agitated. Too many. Can't confirm ID. One entered the zone late. Still moved. Misfire. Sev. Audio. Still crying. Command silent. No follow-up. No evac. And near the bottom, underlined 3 times. We buried it. Not done. There was no signature. They took it to the local VFW. The man behind the desk turned pale after a few lines and asked them to leave. Some things weren't supposed to be archived, he muttered. That night, the house began to creak. Not normal settling. These were deliberate, like footsteps pacing. The family dog, usually glued to their side, refused to enter the room. Instead, he stood at the door and growled, or sometimes whimpered. One evening, his mother went in to change the sheets and noticed the outline. A faint stain, man-sized, right where the bed used to sit. She tried to clean it. Bleach didn't touch it. Neither did vinegar. It always came back. And always with that shape. The brother started hearing things. A voice. Always the same line, barely more than a whisper. It's not over. He checked the folder again. The paper was aging faster than it should have. Yellowing. Curling. As if trying to disappear. But the words stayed. Not done. He started sleeping with the lights on. The last entry in his journal, before he stopped writing entirely, was just 3 words. I hear them. No one's lived in that house for a year now. But sometimes, when the wind dies down, the neighbors say they hear shuffling from inside, and a low voice repeating, "Still moving." She left in uniform. We found the photo after Nana passed. Tucked in the back of an old jewelry box, behind yellowed receipts and a rusted brooch. She was standing beside a streetcar track, wearing full military uniform, jacket crisp, boots laced, hat tilted just right. Except no one in the family ever remembered her serving. She'd talked about rationing, about the air raid drills, about writing to boys overseas. But she'd never mentioned being there, being one of them. Dad said, maybe it was a costume, a parade, a borrowed outfit, something harmless. Except the patch on her sleeve wasn't decorative. It was regulation. And the name stitched above the pocket? Her own. We dug deeper. Old records, local archives. It was slow going. Korean War enlistments were spotty, especially for women. But one thing stood out. A clipping from 1952. Woman in uniform last seen walking westbound on the Mill Street track. No photo, just a short paragraph. Unidentified, no confirmed name. But the date of disappearance matched the same year as Nana's photo. And the name listed under survived by was her mother's maiden name. So we went there. Mill Street. Now just cracked pavement and an old rail sunk into the ground like a scar. No trains in decades. We stood where the photo must have been taken. It was quiet. Too quiet for a Friday. Then we noticed the tracks, boot prints, damp, even though it hadn't rained. They stretched in a straight line, one direction only, westbound. We followed them for about 2 blocks before they just stopped. No smudge, no turn, no fading. Just the last step pressed into gravel. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing footsteps, slow, deliberate, like someone pacing along hardwood floors. Only we have carpet. The next morning, the soles of my shoes were wet. I hadn't left the house. The photo's still on my desk. And every year, on the same date, someone leaves a single, damp footprint by the back door. No note, no noise, just a trace. Maybe she never told us because she was still walking, and still hasn't made it back. Arlington Plot 23. It was supposed to be a simple visit. Just me and a bouquet of lilies, walking past the rows at Arlington like I'd done a dozen times before. Plot 17. Headstone 144. My grandfather's resting place. At least that's what we were always told. But that morning, I made a wrong turn. Or maybe not a wrong turn, just one I'd never taken before. A section labeled Plot 23. I'd never heard of it. None of the maps showed it. No signs, no fences. Just there. The grass looked the same. The stones were the same white marble. Except something felt off. The dates. Each headstone in Plot 23 had 2 death dates. Side by side. One from the 1940s. The other from the 1980s. Or 1990s. Or even 2003. I thought it was a mistake. Some kind of refurbishment error. Until I saw his name. Henry Dalton. My grandfather. One date said 1944. Presumed KIA in France. The other said 1999. I stood there for a long time, reading it, rereading it. When I got home, I showed the photo to my dad. He went pale, said it was fake, a prank. That's not his grave, he insisted. He was cremated. You were there. But I know what I saw. I touched it. The stone was warm. A week later, my grandfather, who'd lived with us for years, started acting strange. He'd stare at the TV when nothing was on, mutter things. It's not over. Orders still stand. And once, late at night, I heard him talking on the phone. Only there was no phone in his room. One morning he was gone. His clothes were missing, his medals, even his old army boots. We filed a report. Searched everywhere. But nothing. Out of desperation, I went back to Plot 23. The headstone was still there, but now it had a third date. 2023. I reached out and touched it again. Still warm. Some say soldiers never really leave the battlefield. But what if some of them never came back? Not completely. Would you look at your grandfather the same way? If you thought he might still be following orders? The ammo box. It started with an inventory audit. Just a routine check at the State Historical Museum's off-site storage. An unremarkable concrete building tucked behind a shuttered strip mall. I was volunteering that summer, mostly scanning accession forms and checking for pest damage on uniforms. Boring stuff. But the ammo box wasn't boring. It was a dark green M2A1, scuffed and dented, the kind issued for .50 cal rounds. A label on the side had long since peeled away, leaving a pale square of exposed paint. It had been part of a recent donation. Items from the estate of a retired Army sergeant who had served 2 tours in Afghanistan. Most of his stuff was unremarkable. Faded fatigues, a Kevlar vest, a few old photos. But the ammo box wouldn't open. It wasn't rusted shut. That was our first thought. No, someone had fitted it with a dial lock. An aftermarket combination lock built right into the latch. And no one had the code. We logged it, tagged it, and moved it to a shelf. I didn't think much of it until a week later when Cheryl, one of the full-time staff, called me into our office. You were in room B yesterday, right? With the ammo box? Yeah, just scanning boxes. Why? She frowned. Security caught something strange on the overnight camera. Sound. There was a click from the box, like metal shifting. And then some kind of whisper. She played the footage. Grainy. Static-ridden. But there it was. A faint voice. Unclear. Muffled, but deliberate. Like someone speaking through layers of cloth. I couldn't make out the words, but it made the hair on my arm stand up. They brought in a portable X-ray unit the next day. I got to watch. The image slowly came into focus. Cluttered, dense, unclear shapes inside. Then the tech leaned in, squinted, and muttered, "That looks like teeth." Everyone went quiet. There were unmistakably human teeth inside. At least a dozen. No one wanted to say the obvious out loud, but we all knew what it implied. We contacted the authorities. They told us to wait. Standard procedure, they said. Chain of custody and all that. Then Frank, the night security guy, started acting weird. He was ex-military too. Quiet, reliable. Not the type to stir up drama. But after a few days of guarding the storage unit, he came to work looking pale and jumpy. "I hear it talking to me," he said flatly. We laughed nervously. Thought it was a joke. "I'm serious. It talks. Around 3 a.m., always the same voice. Male. Telling me numbers, different ones each night. Like it's trying different combinations." We told him to take a break. Management gave him 2 days off. He didn't come back. 2 nights later, the police found his body in his apartment. Gunshot wound. Self-inflicted. No note. Except there was something. In his nightstand, wedged between old receipts and a pair of dog tags, was a spiral notebook. The last page had one sentence, scribbled in shaky handwriting. I didn't lock it. The voice was already in there. They came for the ammo box that morning. Full hazmat team. Packed it into a sealed crate and drove it off in an unmarked van. No explanation. Not even a case number left behind. I sometimes wonder if they opened it, if they figured out the code, if they listened. And every so often, when I close my eyes at night, I hear a faint click, like a dial turning. Would you keep spinning? Folded into the flag, the funeral was on a Thursday. Cloudless, windless, the kind of day that makes everything look too sharp, too defined. I was standing with the others at the back of the military funeral center just outside D.C., where the flags are always folded perfectly, and the silence feels rehearsed. The deceased was a decorated Marine, not someone I knew personally. I was there as part of a detail, assisting with logistics, uniforms, protocol, the whole production. I'd done this dozens of times, but this time, something felt off. It started during the folding of the flag. You've probably seen it. 2 service members, one on each side, folding the flag into that perfect triangle. Hands in sync, every crease with practiced precision. Except today, I saw 3 hands. I know what you're thinking. I questioned it too. I thought maybe someone had stepped in behind them. A trick of the light, but when I checked the footage from the center's overhead camera, it was clear. Only 2 soldiers were present, but the flag was moving as if a third pair of hands was helping. A shadow that didn't belong to anyone flickered between the 2 men. Quick, deliberate. I paused the video, went frame by frame. In one shot, you could see all 4 hands. Real hands. One of them had a scar I remembered from a training accident, but it belonged to Corporal Reeves, who died 6 months earlier in a roadside bombing overseas. The more I looked into it, the weirder it got. The flag they'd folded? It wasn't assigned to the Marine's family. In fact, when we checked the inventory, that flag didn't exist in our records. No serial, no tag, no prior use. And then there was the stain. Tiny, almost imperceptible. Near the inner fold, where only someone unfolding the flag would notice. It looked like dried blood. We sent it to the lab for testing, thinking maybe it was a mistake, a cut during handling. The results came back a week later. Human blood. Male. And the DNA matched a soldier listed as KIA in 1983. But when we went to pull the records, His file had been flagged as lost in administrative restructuring. No digital backup, no paper file. Nothing. Gone, like he'd never served. I tried to bring it up with my CO. He shut it down immediately. Told me not to pursue it. Said it was probably a clerical error and that I should focus on my current assignment. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. That shadow. That hand. The flag that shouldn't exist. Since then, I've been to 5 more funerals at that same center. Every single time, there's been something odd. A flicker. An extra footprint. One flag folded tighter than humanly possible. It's like someone, or something, is making sure every fold is honored, even if they were forgotten in life. So now I watch the footage after each service. I look for the shadows. And sometimes, when I'm alone in the viewing room, I swear I feel someone standing behind me. Not angry, not sad, just waiting. And if I ever get a funeral with full honors, I wonder if the extra hands will come for me too. Would you want them to? If you made it to the end, you're officially a legend. Seriously, thank you so much. If you didn't fall asleep, hit that like button and subscribe. See you in the next video.